My children's name are Graham Albert and Savannah Celeste. And what I remember about them is the day the doctor came in to tell us the sex of the babies, and he referred to them as the perfect twins. And he didn't realize how right he was when he said those words. He meant because they were a boy and a girl, but I knew it was much more than that. They are the perfect twins.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us.
Thank you so much for joining me, Ryan, and thank you for coming on and you know, it's always a raw, emotional thing for me to talk and talk very in depth about my son. So I'm glad you are here, and you're going to be opening yourself up when you're talking about your beautiful twins.
Indeed.
Now, give a brief history about yourself. You know, we were talking a little bit, but you know, everybody who's listening, you live on the East Coast. You've spent some time in Asia.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So my wife and I live in New Jersey, originally from New Jersey. But while in college, I was a Chinese major and had the opportunity to study in Taiwan for a year. Took that opportunity to travel to Thailand, Japan. I've been to Hong Kong. Love Asia. It's just an incredible place. It's just as soon as you step off the plane, you know, wow, this is amazing. The history is just incredible. So yeah, that was during my college years. But as New Jersey tends to do with many people, despite the high taxes and the not so great weather, you just always find your way back, and I did, which I'm very glad, because that's where I met my wife Michele. So I met Michele 8 years ago. I did briefly move to North Carolina for a hot minute. Thought there would be an opportunity in my line of work, which was in the gyms. I worked in a gym for many years. Moved to Charlotte briefly to open a gym there, and realized again the tentacles of New Jersey pulled me back in. So that didn't last long. I missed it. My family's here and everyone's here, so ended up back in New Jersey and been here ever since. So that is our geographical history there.
Well, this is good. I always find it funny because everybody, I'm in Utah, and to get to the nearest state line, you have to drive close to 100 miles. Yeah. And then when I was talking to a friend who lives in Philadelphia, he's like, "Oh man, I gotta drive all the way down to DC." And I was like, "Oh man, you know, from Philly to DC, that's got to be a couple 100 miles." He's like, "Oh no, right. It's almost 100 miles." I was like, "Wait a second."
Yeah, I mean, we have people, right? People who live in New Jersey and commute to work in Connecticut, so they'll drive from through New York into Connecticut to go to work. Yeah, it's going to be an hour and a half drive each way, but people do it. Is definitely. I've been down south, like places like Texas, where you got to drive 24 hours just to get out of the state. Here in New Jersey, you can get through the whole state, top to bottom, in 3.5, 4 hours.
And I love that. It just is one of those things where it's like, man, you could see 15 different states in a weekend. So.
And I should take this opportunity to tell anyone listening, contrary to what many people think of New Jersey, which is pretty much Newark Airport and Atlantic City, that is not what the most of New Jersey is like. And in fact, if you go to Western New Jersey, it is some of the most beautiful places you'll ever see. So I encourage anyone, if you're ever around this way, get away from the Newark and those types of places, the bigger city-like places. Go out west, and New Jersey is pretty awesome. So taxes are not fun, but it is actually a really cool state.
To visit, it's probably awesome.
It is indeed. It is indeed.
Well, wonderful. Well, Ryan, thank you. I was like, it's pretty funny how our perspective of a place that we don't live is like, oh my goodness, Jersey to New York, Jersey to Michigan. I don't know how far away that is. So
it's true.
So you said you met your wife Michele 8 years ago. You've been married for 6 years, did you say? Or
going on 6, yeah.
Going on 6.
We just had our 5-year anniversary, so going on 6,
well,
yep.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And how was that first little bit of your marriage?
Yeah, so we met maybe it's 2012 is when we met, and it's funny, I'm older than my wife. 9 years older than my wife. So when I met her, I was 31 and she was 22. And at the time I was in a relationship. I just gotten out of a relationship. And the reason I just got out of a relationship was because, and most people in their 30s are ready to get married. I was not. So the girl I was with at the time was like, hey, listen, are we going to get married? I was like, I'm sorry, I'm not ready. I wasn't ready. And it just so happens most 22, 23-year-olds are also not ready for marriage. So when I met Michele and we went on a date, and I was like, hey, I'm not ready for marriage or anything. And she's like, yeah, either am I. I'm like, well, that's great. Want to go on another date? Let's see what happens. So, we continued to date. She'll tell you that I relentlessly pursued her. I don't quite remember it that way. I feel like there was more messages in my inbox than hers, but whatever. And as I was telling you earlier, we met at the gym. I ran a gym, and she had come with some friends on a Groupon. Glad we did that Groupon deal, because I was against it. When my partner was like, hey, let's do a Groupon, I said, that's going to be a waste of money and blah, blah, blah. Good thing we did that. So that's how we met. And she was a great athlete. And that was one of the one of the things that caught my attention was, man, I can make this girl like a really good weightlifter. She was a dancer back in the day. She just knew how to move. Her body was really, she was really good with, she would pick things up right away.
Just to clarify, this is a CrossFit gym.
Yes.
With a workout gym as well, right?
Correct. So a little different. So, and that's one of the things I know you and I are talking about to kind of, backtrack is, I got involved in CrossFit because I was pursuing, again, I was a Chinese major in college. Hey, I'm going to go back to China. I'm going to maybe work in the government, and, maybe I'm going to be a diplomat one day. I had, pretty substantial plans there, but as life happens, got a job working for my uncle in California, making money, and he owned his own painting company, and a very successful painting company. But again, as we discussed, the sole purpose of that company, was for him to teach me how to take that company over one day. And the whole purpose was, hey, how much money can we make? Hey, how can we cut the margins? How can we save a little here to make more money? And he was very good at that. I was not. When the motivation every day was all about just dollars and cents and making money, I just had no motivation at all to do that. And that's how I kind of ended up in the fitness world. Is I said to myself, all right, if this isn't working, it's now been a couple of years removed from college. I ain't going back to school. I don't have that in me. What do I want to do? Well, what do I love to do? And fitness I was an athlete my whole life. I love being in the gym. I love working out. So, hey, maybe that's the path. And I was fortunate enough to make some relationships with people who gave me a shot, helped me get whatever certifications I needed, had me get my feet wet by starting to train just a few people. Next thing you know, it really, really blew up, and it became, I owned my own gym. I ran gyms. So I was super fortunate because of that aspect of which I realized what I am good at, and that is relationship building. That is being a part of something more substantial than, a balance sheet in terms of, hey, we got to make money this quarter. We got to make money. I get it. That's important. Right. Mm-hmm. But boy, there's something to be said about loving what you do. It's such a cliche thing to say, but I really loved working in the gym, being in the gym. So when I met Michele and we had that in common, that was a pretty huge thing to have in common, to have that desire to be a part of something like that, right? Because CrossFit gyms and people out there might be biased about CrossFit one way or the other, but the one thing that's pretty universal and we all agree about is there's really cool and unique bonds that get formed inside of those types of gyms. Not just CrossFit gyms. I'm sure jiu-jitsu and other types of gyms have those similar relationships, and that's what we had. So all that being said, sorry to go on that tangent there, but we met at the gym. Took a while before we really started dating, because again, I just got in a relationship. So, but then once, it was kind of, once we really decided to commit to a relationship with, a couple months after, we never looked back. So it didn't take long. We got engaged not even 2 years later, got married a year and a half after that in June of 2016.
Well, good. It's,
yes,
it's always feel good to hear about how people meet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That is the happy part of our story. Unfortunately, there's more to it that comes with it, though.
Yeah. Well, the tapestry of life is is sown
Yes.
with joy and sadness. So, and
Indeed.
so it really started almost from the get-go. The happiness and the joy from the get-go of your from your wedding. So let's dwell into that.
Yeah, June 2016. Dream wedding. We got married at a place called Corona Farms, and it was on June 10th. So if anybody who's familiar with the weather in New Jersey, it's always unpredictable. I guess you could say that about anywhere, but it really is unpredictable. And June can be 65, 70 and a little bit, gloomy, or it can be 100 and humid and you can't even stand outside. And we had an outdoor wedding planned at this barn setting. It was going to be beautiful. Leading up to it, like any couple who's about to get married, I'm sure there's couples out there who had to cancel their wedding for COVID who are like, don't tell me about weddings. So to all of you, I apologize. I don't want to be insensitive to you, but we were just the weather, and it was perfect. It was 75, a light breeze, sun. So, our wedding day was just picturesque. It was everything you could ask for. Our honeymoon, we went to Bali in Indonesia, which is another dream trip.
Yeah.
That was everything we could have ever dreamed of. Beautiful. We were there 10 days. Everything just worked out perfectly. An incredible trip. So yeah, we hit the ground running. We started with as picturesque and as perfect a marriage and wedding as you can have. So we got home, and I'll never forget, I was in the kitchen of our townhouse, the first home we got together, and got home, after a 4 or 5 hour flight. So my sister Shannon calls and she, hey, welcome home. How was it? Great. Hey, just want to let you know, like, while you were gone, Daddy was diagnosed with cancer. Don't even know why I'm getting upset about that. Not even here to talk about that. So it just was like, whoa, it was like a kick in the stomach.
Yeah.
We were on the highs of highs, and then to hear that was okay. But I'm sure, like other people, okay, so what do? We get treatment, we fix this thing, we make it better, right? And my dad was, it was pretty sudden, he was just at our townhouse painting the entire house, So I'm like, what do you mean he's got cancer? How is that possible? He was fine when we left. So, that was, again, June 2016. He had esophageal cancer. He went in, had his esophagus removed, and they said success. Okay, we think we got it. We feel good about it. And, it was obviously a brutal recovery from that, but he recovered. And just a month or two later, he was moving around and like, okay, this is great. He's going to get through this. He may not be doing the things he used to do, but he's going to be okay. So that was around, I don't remember the date of the surgery. It was only a few months later so maybe. And then in the fall, approaching Christmas, all of a sudden he started to stumble, and he started to have a hard time talking. And we're like, what's going on? Like, this is, so we were taking him into Colombia in the city because they were supposed to be the best at this specific type of cancer. It's going to appointments. Long story short, too late, I know, but right before Christmas, the days before Christmas, I'll never forget this. At my mom and dad's, the doctor called, the surgeon called, or excuse me, the doctor oncologist called, and my sister and I went in the other room to say, what's up, doc? What's going on? They did a scan, and it spread to his brain, and the doctor said, there's nothing we could do. So it was just hard because it was like, wait, we beat it. What do you mean there's nothing we do? And then you do the research, and you're like, it's actually really, my understanding was it's rare that type spreads to the brain. So it's like, man, what bad luck that is. So, that was Christmas. My dad passed away March 16th. So 3 months later. But it was just hard because he just was not himself, Yeah. And my dad was Vietnam vet, worked his whole life. He was amazing, and he never stopped for 1 second. So to see him now, I have to help him go to the bathroom. I have to help him bathe. It was just brutal. So, and what was sad too is my wife, didn't have a father growing up, and my dad was like a father to her. Obviously, it was her father, and he was only 72. He wasn't. He was not, and he was up until he had cancer. He was in great shape. So, that was obviously a devastating blow for myself, my wife, my family. I have my mom and my older brother and my 2 older sisters, and my nieces and nephews. So that happens, and we're like, okay, you know, I look back and I'm crying now. I don't know why. I mean, because we've been down this path a million times, but although it was too soon, you know, that is the order of life, right? Like you know, your parents are supposed to go before you, right? So there was, I mean, that maybe that's a horrible way to say it, but there's that aspect of it, you know. So as painful as it is, and it's too soon, and there's never enough time, there's still that part that this is the order of things, right? So you get through that like every other millions of people have, you know, through the course of time. And there's no end to support because so many people have been there. So, you know, it's a unique feeling, and it's something that no matter how many times anyone over the course of mankind experience it, it's pain, it's hurt. But it is the circle of life, call it what you want. So 2017 of March, that happens. The following year, my wife and I are laying in bed, and my sister Shannon, my poor sister Shannon, she was making these calls. I'll never forget this. She calls like 2 a.m, and I'm laying in bed with Michele. And again, you never get a good call at 2 a.m, right? My sister's 7 years older than me with 3 kids. She's not calling me for a ride home from the bar. Like it's not good why she's calling. Yeah. And she was just hysterically crying, and she's just crying in the phone saying Bobby's dead. So Bobby was my sister Kristen's husband, and he had been, you know, sorry.
No.
He had been in a car accident and passed away that night. This was Father's Day, actually. And you know, him and my sister Kristen had 3 kids. So me and Michele jump out of bed, and we get in the car and we run. Michele said to bring tissues. I said, why? We're not going to need tissues. That's why I always listen to your wife, right? So we, you know, we get in the car and we we fly to my sister's house. She lives, you know, only 10, 15 minutes away from us. And never forget, you know, my brother, his wife are there. My sister, Kristen, whose husband just passed away. My mother, my sister Shannon at the time who called me, she was actually away. I forget. I think her son had a football camp. I can't remember why, but she was actually out of state. And my mom was in the driveway, and my sister Kristen is just shattered, just hysterically crying. I mean, that morning, her husband went to a golf outing, you know, she kissed him goodbye. I'll see you later, you know. Yeah. And now he's gone. And she's just, how am I going to live? How am I going to do this? How am I going to tell my 3 kids, you know? How am I going to walk back? And it's like 2 a.m. How am I going to walk back in there and explain what happened? Like and we all were just hysterically crying. I don't know. And I'll never forget her oldest daughter walking, you know, her son had gotten up looking for her. He's the youngest. I think at the time he was maybe 6. And Kristen wasn't in the bed. So he went to his oldest sister's room and said, hey, where's mommy? So McKenna, the oldest, who was at the time 11, maybe. She came outside and was like, hey, mommy, what's going on? And Kristen just went inside and had to take her 3 kids and say, daddy's gone. And so, you know, after losing my dad, and, you know, this was just brutal. And I'd given the eulogy at my dad's funeral, and I gave the eulogy at my brother-in-law's funeral, the same church in the same spot, like just over a year apart. So that was brutal. And then this kind of segues right into the twins and Graham and Savannah, and which is why, you know, I'm not, that part of the story is essential into understanding, you know, a lot of the emotions that came with Graham and Savannah. Mm-hmm. Obviously losing, you know, your children is all you need to hear, but this was just a blow that came after this, and it was just so hard for us. So hard.
The months leading up to you finding out that you guys are pregnant is just so emotionally taxing. It's just got to be. It's just got to be the floor dropping out from underneath you.
Right.
2 times.
That's a perfect way to say it. Like it's literally like having that feeling.
Yeah.
So, you know, between my sister and again, Bobby was amazing. Like, you know, they had been together for 20 plus years. So, you know, I mean, he wasn't my brother-in-law, he was my brother, and then, their kids, my nieces and nephews, like, we're all so close, this was hard. So at that time, Michele and I are trying to, get pregnant, and we're having a hard time. A little less than a year of it just not working. And we decided, okay, listen, I'm not getting any younger. And as I stated, I'm older than Michele. So like, I feel the clock ticking just from a timing perspective. Obviously Michele is younger. We didn't have much concern there, but we wanted to start a family. So we went and saw some specialists, and we did IUI, which, if you're listening to this podcast, many people may be familiar with, right? It's just kind of a step below IVF in terms of, okay, let's try this first. So, okay, great. Let's do that. We did that. And there's not, the chances of that actually working aren't incredibly high. So you kind of got to prepare yourself. We were fortunate enough that it worked. It worked the first time. And it's funny, like, I remember, okay, great, it worked. But I'll never forget, I got a phone, Michele, to go to an appointment, and I had, I don't know why I didn't go with her, but she went for an appointment, right? Because during this types of stuff, you have to go for tons of blood work, and a lot of them were early. And even though, like, I'm an early guy, she was at this one by herself, and she calls me and she's like screaming into the phone, "There's 2." I'm like, 2 what? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, "There's 2. We're having twins," right? And I'll never forget that call, and I'll never forget that. And I not here to open up the can of worms of, when is this creation a creation? When is it, right? Everyone has their opinion. That's fine, but I know, first of all, the minute we found out we were pregnant, those are my babies. I just didn't know there was 2 at the time. But when she called and said there's 2, like, I envisioned our whole life with twins. I'd already seen it all. I played out in my mind. I was a father to twins. The minute I heard that, those are my babies, and I was on, and then following those days, I'm on every podcast, how to be a dad to twins. And, I got books about twins, and, I'm calling, I have a few friends who have twins. I'm like, tell me everything. I'll never forget the text message from friends and family who were like, "Oh, good luck. I don't even know how you're going to," and, at the time it was like humorous because we were so naive and ignorant. Like, you think nothing bad can ever happen in that sense. So, I'm sure those people would cringe and be horrified and feel terrible about the message they send about, like, that's going to suck having to have 2 babies at once. Right. Like, so it was against the backdrop of what I just said. It was almost like, I don't want to use the word replace, but we just lost my dad. We just lost Bobby. And now we're getting 2 more people. It felt like it was them saying, "Here you go, guys." Like, it just felt so right. It just felt like we deserve this, right? I mean, again, I don't know what the right words are, but it was just extra special. Yeah. If that is even a possibility for creating life to be extra special, this was extra special because of what we went through. And there's a video we have that I can't watch it, but I mean, I know we have it, and then Michele, I think, shared it, of when we told our family at Christmas. They knew Michele was pregnant. We kept it a secret about twins, and we told them on Christmas. And every Christmas, we line up all the nieces and nephews. And for this Christmas, we're like, "Oh, here, hold up a shirt for the new baby who's coming." And then they all set up, and I said, "Oh, wait." And I got a second shirt and gave it to them. And they were like, "Shut up." No. And everyone freaked out and crying and hugging. And, like, that memory now I cherish because it's one of the few memories we have of our babies. But it just felt so incredible to be like, we've been through so much, and now here we go. My babies are going to be able to help us recover, help us. We'll never get over, those losses, but they can be a way to help us get through the next day and remember how to smile and love and be happy again. Like, this is amazing. And so that was part of it. And again, as I stated, I'm now 41, at the time, we're talking to that, I was 38, 39, most of my friends have kids who were 10, 11, 12 years old, and here I am just starting. So maybe this is selfish and wrong to say, but I kind of felt like, oh man, this is great. Like, I'm catching up in one swoop. I got 2. Like, this is great. Like, I'm not going to be alive forever. I want to be on this earth as long as I possibly can with my kids. And now, instead of having 1 and then waiting another and having, and again, we're not guaranteed that my wife is going to get pregnant again. Who knows? And this might be our only shot at it. wow, what a blessing to have two. Like it just, so for so many reasons than just the obvious blessing of creating life and having babies and having twins, I'm trying to paint the picture of just how incredible it was for us to be blessed with, oh my God, we're having twins.
Yeah.
And it really was. So again, that, marriage starts off, first couple weeks, great. Next couple of years, really hard. Okay, we're having twins. This is going to we're going to at least get back to something. And then the ultimate carpet being pulled out from under us, as I said earlier, the worst of the worst.
Yeah. Walk me through what happens. You find out you're through IFI, you're having a baby.
IUI, yeah.
IUI, sorry.
Yeah.
Through IUI. I was like IVF. It wasn't IVF, IUI. You find out you're having twins. Christmas comes around. You tell your family. As you're progressing, what happens?
Yeah. So things are going great. The appointments are going great. Doctors are like, look great, healthy, everything's wonderful. We did the whole, in this day and age, announcing things on Facebook and stuff. That's just what we do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we waited the appropriate time, to okay, we're in the clear, right? We're out of our first trimester. It's okay, we can do it now. We did all that. January, February, everything's fine, everything's great. And then come March, and again, obviously that day we'll never forget. It was a Friday. Working in the gym. We had the 20-week scan, which so me and Michele we're going in for that, and then we were supposed to go back to the gym at night because our gym was doing this special. If anybody does CrossFit, it was during the open. Some people will be familiar with that term. Yeah. So everybody was coming back to do the open workout that night at the gym, and it's a fun thing. Everybody goes afterwards. Everybody goes and hangs out. So okay. Me and Michele go to do the scan, and because they're twins, and this is the anatomy scan, the lady doing the scan said, I brought snacks. You said you're a foodie. I'm a huge foodie. So I brought snacks. I'm like, it's going to be a while. I need to make sure I have food because I cannot not have snacks while I'm sitting here. And sure enough, it was long. And she's going through the scan. She's like, oh my God, they're so perfect. Look at their little toes and their little hands. Here's their head. She's showing us baby A, baby B, and we're just like, oh, wow, this is, great. This is incredible. Yeah. Blah, blah. And it lasted a while. Michele would know that. It might have been like an hour and a half. It was a long time because, they got to do it all, and there's two, so it takes a while. Yeah. So sitting there, and all of a sudden, once they finish the scan, they do, I don't even want to try to recall the type of scan, the next scan it was, but whatever she had to do, she just kind of went blank. The
technician,
the lady doing the scan. Yeah. So we're like, okay. She says, don't move and just kind of sit tight. Don't get dressed. I need to go get the doctor. And she hastens out. She quickly exits. And me and Michele are left in the room by ourselves like, okay. All right. And we're like, Michelle's like, that's not good. I'm like, again, the ignorance is bliss, you just never, this can't happen to us, right? Nothing bad can happen, right? This is not going to happen. So I'm like, I'm sure he just wants to look at something and it's fine. And the doctor, who I don't believe we had ever met, one of the doctors who was in the rotation, he comes in, and as somber as a man can ever say these words, just comes in and says, I'm so sorry. And sorry for what? I just spent almost 2 hours being told how perfect my little babies are and healthy and great. And he said, it's a blur, the order, but basically said, you are dilated and you're not leaving this hospital until these babies come out. Because I had said something like, oh, okay, what? You just got to give her some medication and we'll go home and rest and be fine. And that's when he said, no, you're not leaving this hospital again until these babies are born. What do you mean born? We're at 20 weeks. Yeah. You can't even comprehend the words. So I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. So he's like, we're rushing. So I said, okay, do I need to make I'm still not getting it. I'm like, so do I make an appointment? And we come back. He goes, she's not leaving this hospital. In fact, we're rushing her over right now to whatever floor we have to go to. So again, we're going for, not only are we just going in for the 20-week scan, but we sat for almost 2 hours being told how perfect and wonderful everything is. And now we're being told
Something's wrong.
Dilated and basically going into labor. So, I mean, devastation. So they bring her to a room. Her doctor that we had a close relationship with and it was fortunately there. She comes in and she's now explaining to us what's going on. And it's like, you know, and again, now it was one thing when that first doctor came in and who we didn't really know in a monotone voice is somewhere in your mind, you want to believe like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Right. I mean, he absolutely did. But of course you have no rapport. Begging for something to be like, this is not what I think. Right.
Yeah.
But when this other doctor came in and her expression had just said it all. But even then you're still clinging on to every bit of hope. So she comes in, she says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to you're going to be on your back and you are going to be on your back potentially for the next 20 weeks of your life. You're not moving. So that's that. So now you're like, we're supposed to go back to the gym in an hour. What do you mean 20 weeks of being on our back? Right. So we're trying to process that. And then again, moments you'll never forget. That doctor and now a third doctor who, again, they were great. They were all tremendous. But Michelle's regular OB and this third doctor comes in. They're just going to look, right? So they look, and I'll never forget their reaction was just, in fact, he cursed and just dropped his head like that, you know, and he looked. And again, I mean, it was just, I don't think I cried at that point because how could this be happening? How is this real? This is not real. This can't be happening. It was just so surreal. So, but we're not completely done yet, right? They're still in there and they're not, as long as Michelle's body doesn't go into labor, everything is she just can't move. Okay. Then to my wife's, and I could go on for years about how amazing she is, but one of the many, many times she showed it was, she's like, okay, then that's what I have to do. Like, she never even batted an eye. It wasn't like, are you serious? Like 20, I have to what? Nope.
I've got a hair appointment tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Like
you have to do it. I will do it. Yeah.
Never even questioned it. So here we are now an hour or two after finding this out. And now we have the doctors coming in over the next couple of hours and 24 hours and saying, well, here are your choices. You really have three choices. We can do an emergency cerclage where we go in and we're going to try to, again, you're so dilated, we don't know if we can, we don't know how effective it'll be, but we can try to basically stitch it back up, okay, and artificially keep it closed. We can just let nature run its course. We can do nothing and have you be on your back and just hope that we can hold on to a point where they can be born. So, you can lay on your back and just hope that they stay in there and cook a little bit longer until a time where they could be viable. Or option 3, we can artificially start labor and basically abort, basically loot, Yeah. You're asking me and then I'll never forget, they said, we understand that this is how hard this is. We're going to leave you guys alone to talk about it. What are you asking me? Like, are you really asking me like, hey, do you want to just, and I don't mean this as a slight to the doctors. They were doing their job. I mean, here's what your options are. But you're asking me to give up. That is something that we just never even, and again, credit to my wife. I mean, because she's dealing with the physical 100%, not just the emotional, but the physical part of it. I mean, that was never even a thought. But they also had to share this. We want you to know that the way things are now, I don't see them staying in there much longer. So even if you do hold on for 3-4 weeks, now you have to consider the high probability of birth defects and what could come of that. We just need to make you aware of that so you have all the information. So now, impossible. Like, this is impossible. Like what you're asking me. So, hey, you want to try to stay on your back and see, but just to let you know, there's a good chance they could come in the next couple of weeks and might survive and have severe birth defects for the rest of their life, which will change your lives forever. Or they might be in the NICU for a day or 2 or 5 or 10 and then pass away, and you'll have to endure that. Go ahead. We'll give you some time to think about it. I mean, it's just, indescribable. It's just indescribable from where the day was to where it ended that night. So I think at that time, like emotionally, we just had convinced ourselves, like, we're going to do this. Like, they're going to survive. You get messages from people. You hear about a story in Japan where twins were born at 20 weeks and 3 days. And even though that's not viability, they survived and now they're doctors. And you're like, you cling to that, right?
Yeah.
You're like,
yeah.
No one reminds you that, hey, that's the odds of that being your story are the same as you winning the lottery 3 times. Like, but you hear that story and you're like, why not us? Why can't that be my babies? So they moved Michele to a room and, that's it. Only to go to the bathroom in which I would help her and back into that bed. Okay. And she's there. When they come in, they're doing the heartbeats and the baby's doing great. So I'm like, hey, we can do this. We have friends coming in who are, every day visiting and all of a sudden, like a day or 2 goes by and we're like, okay, now we just need to get to viability. We need to get to 22 weeks, right? We can do this. Well, shortly after, Michele's water breaks. And at that moment, we're convinced it's over. It's over. Her water breaks. We're hysterical. Now emotions are, we're absolutely hysterical, but nothing happens. And the doctors are like, okay. So apparently the water broke in our son's sac, but not our daughter's. Mm. And come to find out that while this isn't ideal, they can still be okay. He can still, stay hydrated. There's fluid in there. This isn't a deal breaker. It's not the end. So again, another lifeline, right? We're another blow, but then we're still in the fight. We're still in the fight. Yeah. And again, to backtrack a little, this is when I referenced that the doctor came in and referred to them as the perfect twins. So Michele and I decided we don't want to know the sex, right? When we first started pregnant, we're not going to find out the sex. So for all the appointments, it was baby A and baby B, baby A, baby B. Well, when this all happened, we regretted that, right? Now that we knew there was a potential, our time with them was going to be short. We wish that we had we felt like knowing the sex of each baby, and instead of calling them baby A and B, had we known the sex and given them names from the beginning, again, this is just us. Like we felt like that we missed out maybe on having a different bond with them in those times. So we asked the doctors, can you tell us the sex? And I'll never forget him walking in and saying, it's a boy and a girl, the perfect twins. And I know he meant a boy and a girl, which everybody wants a boy and a girl, I guess, it's the ideal scenario, but it was both a beautiful thing to hear and like a punch in the stomach, to hear that, but they were the perfect twins. So now we know it's a boy and a girl, and we decided to name them. We named them Graham and Savannah. Graham Albert. Albert was my dad's name. Savannah Celeste was her grandmother's name, who passed away. So that has some special meaning. Graham and Savannah are names that we had picked out. So, okay, the water broke for Graham, but still in there. Yeah, we're still going strong, and we can do this, right? And I stayed at Michele's bedside, every night. I slept on a little cot right next to her in the hospital every night. And it's one of the things I'll talk about. And I know it's not, groundbreaking, but I like writing. And I was writing in a blog each night, which was extremely helpful to just like get out that emotion, right? There's only so much Michele and I can dump on each other. Maybe there's things I was thinking that I don't want to, I'm angry and I'm upset. I need to get that out, but I'm certainly not going to bring that on her. So having somewhere to vent that was huge. But, we just set up shop in this room. We got to know the nurses, and suddenly it started to feel like, hey, this might work. Like this might work. We got, so it was 10 or 11. Terrible. I don't remember the exact number of days. It felt like a while, but we were getting close to that viability day, that day where, okay, now if they're born, like they're going to, the NICU team, we met with the NICU team. They said, hey, here's what to expect. If we get to that point, we're going to be there and we're going to rush them out. And this is what it's going to be like. And so we're like, okay, we're ready for that. We have a close friend whose sister works in the NICU. I have other people who I got to know from the gym who worked there, who worked in the NICU unit. And they were sharing with us, first of all, success stories. And so now we are really believing. We are like,
We're close.
Everything we've been through, this can't possibly end badly. So, and I think we at that, we were ready. We were ready for this to work, and whatever that meant. If that meant they were born at 23 weeks and there was health issues that we had to deal with or fight through, we were going to do whatever had to be done to help give our babies the best chance at survival and living a happy life, right? So things are going, and then again, moments she'll never forget, laying next to her bedside, and Michele wakes me up, and she's like, oh, I don't feel good. And she threw up. I'm like, oh, you okay? I go over, and it was like at 3 a.m. It was the middle of the morning. I walk over, and I got just close to her, and I felt the heat.
Oh.
I put my hand on her. She was on fire. And I said, and I knew it's over. I knew it. Well, she was going into labor. First of all, she was starting to develop an infection, right? That was the other thing. When the water breaks now, there's that barrier, right? So, just going to the bathroom, she had to be so careful.
Yeah.
For her to spike a fever, now her health being in jeopardy, but it didn't matter because she was going into labor, right? So the nurses come in, and this is obviously the hardest of the hardest. They move us into delivery,
mm-hmm.
and this is the part that is so hard to talk about, not just for obvious reasons, because I would never try to compare your story, our story, anyone else who's lost a child due to miscarriage, stillborn. I mean, I was so woefully ignorant to, this kind of stuff. And I can only imagine what I may have thought before we went through this in turn, right? Like, yeah. I think I speculate that a lot of people who have never been through anything like this think miscarriage and you had a stomach ache and there was bleeding and it was over. And even if that was all that had happened to anyone, that is horrible. And that has things that I can't even, that's horrible. I would never compare what we went through to somebody who lost at 8 or 9 weeks. Like there's no comparison. So I want to make that clear. But with that being said, what transpired in the following hour, that following day, I just feel like was on another level of pain and sorrow. And for us, to go into delivery, and at 10 a.m, my wife now is pushing. She had to get an epidural, and now she's pushing our son. And you know what the outcome is, right? So now we're going through this, and I'm there with her, and I just remember crying like I've never cried before. And she's pushing, and our son comes out. Our son Graham comes out, and Michele said he looks like me. You could see the features, and they hand Graham to Michele, and now we're just hysterically crying, and she's holding our baby, and Savannah was still in there. So, for the next 5 hours, it was just us hysterically crying, holding Graham, and I wrote this down. I'll never forget, his skin was perfect and soft, but it was so cold. And you just, that dichotomy of my beautiful son and his skin's not supposed to feel like that. Like it shouldn't feel like that when I kiss him. To see my wife holding him and crying, like it was just, and then Savannah's still inside. So for the next 5 hours is that. And then all of a sudden she starts going to contractions again. And now it's time to push. So here my wife is holding our son. I mean, that is just, I don't know if anyone can even wrap their mind around like that scene or what that feels like for her physically and emotionally. And for me, it's just so difficult to even try to put into words what that feels like. And I think even now, like I cried about my dad. I'm wondering now, why am I not crying right now? Because it's still so surreal. Like that, I feel like I'm talking about a movie I saw. Yeah. Like I really do. I feel like I'm talking about a movie because that day and in that moment. So, and now they told us this. They were like, listen, there's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. Because, why is the NICU team here? Why aren't there more doctors? Like, we need to try to save him. So when Graham came out, he was lifeless. He was born asleep. When Savannah came out 5 hours later, she took breaths. And that remember yelling at the doctor, like, do something. Can't you do something? I just said, no, I can't. And you feel like, I'm her father and I can't help her. I can't do anything. And to see her little chest move, and to just not be able to do anything, it was just terrible. And she was so perfect. Her features, her nose, and her eyes, and her mouth, and everything. It was just so symmetrical and perfect. And I said that to Michele right away. I was like, my God, she's perfect. She's absolutely perfect. So, I mean, the chaos of the doctor trying to calm me down, and like, we can't. And I guess somewhere deep down inside, I knew, like I understood, but I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't ready to see. I don't know what the heck I thought what to expect, right? How the heck do you prepare for that? So Graham, because her water broke, he came out like bruised. So like his coloring was off. But Savannah was perfect, right? She looked perfect. I just wasn't ready to see her like mouth open and close. And they had to like, no, we can't do anything. It's just not fathomable to be a parent and be told that. So, I'm hysterical. I mean, I remember looking back and actually thinking, we're in the delivery, but I was like screaming. Like, I mean, I wasn't just like tear. I mean, it was like uncontrollable sobbing and screaming. And, they credit to them. And, this is stuff that we learned later on. They let us spend time. Hey, take whatever time you need. Take whatever time you need. And again, how much time? I don't know. What is the right amount of time? I mean, we had no idea. So we just spent time holding them, and being with them. And I know one of the, I played our wedding song, while we were holding them, let them hear that. Unfortunately, like they did have like a photographer who would take pictures for you, and this type of thing. And they weren't there, but there was a nurse, God bless her, who she had a camera and she got them dressed and took pictures that, thank God, that we have those. She did that for us. And we spent that just crying and holding them. And then, a nurse came in at night and is like, let me know when you're good. And again, I don't, when am I good? When am I good for you to take my kids down to your morgue? I don't know what you're asking me. I don't know. I don't know how to handle that.
You're trying to fit a lifetime in that short period. Like there's never enough time.
No,
this
And
life.
so, and again, it's the epitome of, there's no playbook. There's no, I mean, you look back and you're like, I wish somebody would have prepped. How do you prep, a husband? How do you prep that? So I don't begrudge the doctors or anyone for saying, hey, here's what to expect, after, this is going to be. So that was on the 27th of March. And so, so March 15th was when the scan was. So 12 days later. So we made it, we were so close to that 22 weeks, which would have changed the game. Again, my wife and I cry and go over this all the time. What if? And that's the worst thing on the planet you can do, as we all know. Yeah. What if it was just a couple more days? And I say, honey, we don't know if they would have been born and rushed to NICU and passed away. And then, well, at least we could have been with them, So, you deal with that. But, if you were to ask me, I wrote some blogs like that day, and I'm glad I did. I wrote a blog like that day and 2 days later. And because if you were to ask me now, like, so what was going through your mind? I would tell you, I have no clue. I mean, pain, suffering, you name it like that. But that's very generic. And I would hate to give a generic response to how I felt about something so serious. But luckily I have that blog to go back to have that, that raw emotion, that deep, deep raw emotion, which, as I'll maybe talk about, is like, that's part of my connection to Graham and Savannah. So it's important, right? It's not not a pity thing. It's not a woe is me thing. It's part of their story and our story. So it's important. And I want every detail. I want to know every detail how I felt during that time. I don't ever want to forget it. Not in a bad way, because it's part of their story and our story. So,
and that's all you have left of. It's as you're talking about the anger and the pain and stuff, it's so intricate to what you feel for your children. It's part of them with you. And and it's I have so much pain and so much anger that is associated with my son, and and I never want to let go of it. It's not that I'm punching people or breaking things, but it's like I remember these feelings because it is my son. Yeah, and I have to remember those because it's part of him.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know, so when you talk about that, right, I think people sometimes will misunderstand how that fits into healing and moving forward and all that talk, but it is a part of it. It'll always be a part of it. And that anger and that stuff is real. So I think, following March 27th, 2019, on top of losing my dad and my brother-in-law and now the twins, there was a lot of anger. Now, my wife and I believe we're meant to be on every level, but like many meant to be couples, we have different personalities and different ways we handle things. And again, I would never even try to say that I understand her pain in relation to mine, right? I mean, she carried them inside her. That is something that is so obviously special and unique. So she shut down, and she shut down hard, and in part because her personality is to do that, to kind of retreat, and also because for her, obviously, to carry that life inside you, and then to have to, and that's what I was touching on before with, I don't want to compare what other couples and women have been through, because this is something you do not compare, but just talking about what my wife had to do. Yeah. So to imagine holding on to your lifeless child while pushing out your second lifeless child, all in the span of 5 hours, there's people who've done it once and can't come back from it. My wife had to do it twice in one day. I mean, it's just unimaginable. And so in those days following, she locked up in the house. I don't want to see or talk to anyone, or, and for her, even as we progressed down the years, the anger thing is very hard, right? It's very hard. One of the things when I was writing down, talking about this, and I don't mean to jump around, but is that okay? I mean, yeah. So, we've had a lot of great, amazing friends. We have a tremendous support, family and friends, which I don't know what we would do without. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. But we had friends who helped us spiritually, because we were extremely angry and playing the why me. And one of the things that we still struggle with is, and whether it's a spiritual thing or not, I think a lot of people feel this way in terms of, people would say, talk about prayer and things like that, right? And so this is just one example. But we would feel like, because we're so jaded and angry, so let me get this straight. I have a friend who said, "Oh, God answered my prayers and I got this job. Yay. Oh, God answered my prayers and my son made the varsity team. Yay." So wait a minute. God will answer prayers for little Timmy to make his sports team, but God wasn't too busy to answer our prayers to save, right? So again, this is way more nuanced than just that, but I'm just sharing with you, that's a good snapshot of how we felt about everything, right? Yeah. So now all of a sudden, healthy pregnant people almost a trigger to make you angry. And that's terrible, right? Yeah. I mean, and it. And so it's like this. And again, I'm sure, sadly, that anyone who's listening to this, who's experienced this, is nodding their head like, "Oh, I know," because it's like a double knife. It's the trigger of seeing this happy, healthy, pregnant person and feeling anger, and then being like, "What am I doing? Why am I angry at this beautiful thing that's not who I am?" So it's like just a double whammy, right? You shouldn't feel it, but you can't help it. And one thing I had thought about, and I would love to share this because I just think this is something to be aware of for anyone going down this terrible, tragic path that I wasn't aware of. People talk about, how do you live with this? How do you get over it? Or whatever term you want to use, right? However people want to look at it. And I think a lot of us know, like, obviously you never get over it. You learn to live with it and things like that. But something that became evident to me was the idea of, why is this hurt so much day after day after day and after, right? Why is this pain still so strong, just as it was the day after? And what I realized is because every second of every moment of every day is just another second moment of every day that they're not here making memories with us. So every rainy day, every smile, every party, every movie that my wife and I sit down and watch with, that should be a memory that and it's a memory I'm not having with Graham and Savannah. So that's never, as long as I'm on this earth, that's going to keep happening. Every birthday party, the obvious things, the birthday parties, the Christmases that they're not here for, but it's all the small things in between, right? It's all the poopy diapers. It's everything. So it's, as long as you're here breathing and doing stuff, it's just a constant memory that you don't get to have with them. It's a constant reminder. Right? Yeah. I don't know if I'm explaining that well, but that's, I understood that, it didn't change it. It didn't stop that constant pain and suffering. It didn't stop, right? I mean, I remember in the days after thinking, like, this house was supposed to have their laughter in it. They were supposed to be in that yard one day. Like, I had already pictured all that, and now it's never going to happen. And there, I read lines like that. Every day is now a memory I don't get to have with you, or something of that nature. And it's so true, and it's what makes it so difficult to cope with, because that never ends, and that never ends. So for people who are struggling with, hey, does this go away? And I think a lot of us talk about, we know it doesn't, but now when you can start to kind of frame why it doesn't and put some context to it, well, it doesn't, because every experience is an experience that was supposed to be them and it's not. Okay, I accept that, right? And something I talk about a ton is, I got to start studying a ton of stoicism after this, right? When you start to need, like, I need to start wrapping my mind around why this world is such a crappy place where crappy things can happen, and how am I supposed to deal with it? And I've read countless books about this and that and that and that. But stoicism is something that actually resonated a lot with me. And the famous line that everyone knows, whether you study stoicism or not, is, the ability to accept the things you cannot change, to change the things that you can, right? And to kind of know the difference. Some people, the serenity prayer, people will refer to that, but that is a life-changing realization. I can't change, no matter all the praying and love in the world, I wish I would do it, right? Would you not? Is there anything you wouldn't do for the opportunity to bring, your son back? Of course. So we know that, but we can't, because all of us would have done it a long time ago. Yeah. But I can control my emotions. I can control my reactions to things. So when I see a woman in front of me who's pregnant, and I hear her on the phone saying, "Oh, I just can't wait till this pregnancy's over," and you cringe. You think to yourself, "Do you know how lucky you are?" Right? And again, that woman's not speaking out of malice toward her unborn child. It's ignorance, right? It's ignorance. So instead of me having a trigger reaction of, like, "How dare, I can't believe it," and then now, I have the ability to frame my emotions. I can control that. I can't control her statement, right? People ask a lot about what to say or do when people come up to you and they try to comfort you, And one thing you just have to remember is they're coming to you from two places. One is love, and the other is ignorance. Yeah. Right? No one's, I hope, is coming to you with ill malice, intent. Yeah. Right? So I can't control that person who comes with me and said, "Don't worry, like, you guys have more kids. Don't worry." Oh, okay. Yeah. I can't control that statement, but I can control me punching that person in the face or saying, "Hey, I appreciate it, and let's move on." Right? So, the time after losing Graham and Savannah, it was a whole lot of learning that. It was just a whole lot of trying to figure that, while being everything that I possibly could for my wife. I feel like she just deserved anything and everything she wanted, and anything I could do for her, and throughout our entire marriage, of course, but especially during that time. So, one of the things we talked about, I was ready for my wife to say, "I never want to experience anything like that again. We can get more dogs," because we are huge dog people. We have 2 puppies, but I never want to have a kid. And if she were to say that, despite me feeling like I want kids, I want a family, I would have said, "Sweetheart, you got it. Like I would never ask that of you if that's how you feel. But to her credit, I mean, she said our goal was to have a family. I want to give Graham and Savannah a brother or sister. Like I want to do this. We went back to our doctors because what's frustrating is, there was no answers to what happened to Graham and Savannah other than, terms like incompetent cervix. They say that, but they don't really even know what, or they told us because it was twins, right? Really? Because I see twins everywhere, right? Mm-hmm. So then you start to play that game of, well, why are they worthy of living, but my twins weren't, right? If you're telling me, well, having twins are risky, I see them all the time. I don't, why were we any different? So,
I don't know where we want to start back, but we haven't really talked about what, after Graham and Savannah were born, you got to hold them for, you got to hold them and be with them.
Yeah.
And then I don't know really how long you were able to be with them before you turned them over to the medical staff.
So I want to say, it was right around like, if Savannah came at like 3:00, it was probably around 10:00 at night. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just certain parts of the story bring out tears, and I don't know why, and other parts don't, because like I said, I swear it's like I'm talking about a movie. And I say it all the time. I laugh at Michele while I don't ever want to spend money going to a movie. Like, we watch all these, like you'll watch like a movie that is this depressing story about, and I'm like, I don't need to spend $15 to watch a movie about a sad story. Like our life is a story that, has plenty of emotion and sadness in it. Right. When I'm telling it, and I think back and, we were in that room for, around 7 hours with our babies, So, and again, I remember the nurse coming in, and I don't envy her position, right? She has to be the one to come in and say, hey, I don't want to rush you, but, let me know. And it's like, again, think of what you're asking and what you're saying like that. But again, I don't envy being that person who has to kind of be responsible for that. And, I remember having a feeling of this isn't the end, right? I'm not giving them away and then it's over, right? And that's something that's been important to understand. I remember feeling this throughout, and especially after, like in the grand scheme of things, your life, my life, all of our lives are a drop in the bucket in the time, in terms of time, right? We're all here for a millisecond.
Yeah.
So yes, Graham and Savannah's life was way too short, but all of our lives are way too short, right? So there was a part of me, even in those early stages of anger and frustrated, whatever you want to call it, and why us, that started to immediately feel, I refuse to let Graham and Savannah's entire existence and being be surrounded by anger and why us, and this is not fair and this is not right, And I immediately started to try to find ways of, hey, they made us parents. These are my kids, right? Mm-hmm. Some people's kids, they live for, some people lose their children at 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 years old, right? Some people, like we talked about earlier, parents more often than not, I assume, pass away before their kids, but at some point it happened. So yes, this is a tragic story, but they're still my kids. They were here for a brief, all too brief time, but they're still my kids who were here. And I need to start figuring out now how to celebrate that. And what did I, what have they brought into life? I was thinking, we always think about our kids make us proud, or, kids make us proud. But I immediately got this feeling of, I need to make them proud, right? And is me sitting here being angry at this poor pregnant lady pushing her daughter down the street, pushing her 2 children down the street and pregnant, and thinking like, this woman's got 3 kids and I'm over here, mourning the loss of 2. Would that really make Graham and Savannah? Good job, Dad. I'm proud of you, And all of a sudden that started manifesting in everything in life, right? Yeah. And I'll repeat this a million times probably about, okay, I need to understand what I have control over and what I don't. So I'd be in the car driving and somebody would cut me off and I think, and then I'd pause and be like, is me cursing this person out or forget just being angry, letting it make me angry. Yeah. is that what I would want my son and daughter to see? Is that what I want? And I feel like they're always with me, right? So, okay, you know what? Hey, maybe that person's rushing home to a loved one who's sick. Maybe that's why they cut me off. Maybe that's why they cut me off. So, and then I started to realize, man, I have the most amazing kids, right? I mean, here I am. I've gone through 39, 40 years of life, and it took them. And I thought I'm this smart, educated guy who I read about stoicism and do all this cool stuff. And I'm like, I play rugby and CrossFit, I'm fit and blah, blah, blah. But they completely opened my eyes in ways that none of that had ever done. And that was awesome. That is incredible, right? And now I'm like, yes. Like, okay, now we're talking. There is, and I mean, I guess I can plug it. I don't know if it's okay, but Jocko Willink, if anybody knows that name, and he has a podcast, and somebody had sent us a link like after everything happened and said, hey, you should listen to this. It's about grief. And, everyone's chipping in with advice, yeah, cool, thanks, blah, blah. And I happened to listen to this, and it was a total game changer. And in short, it's basically, somebody had written to him, hey, I lost a child, and when is this pain ever going to stop? And he goes on about 7-8 minutes to talk about, hey, and he just uses the most amazing analogy and explains it, and it's so accurate, right? I'm saying all these things like, okay, yeah, like my twins, they made me a better person, and now all of a sudden that doesn't mean there weren't moments of me hysterically crying in the car in the driveway because the song came on, or I just pulled into the driveway and had an image of them running out to hug me, or, that still happens obviously now, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't like, oh, and then everything was fine. But what he describes in that video, and he uses like the analogy of like waves, right? And in the beginning, it's just you're underwater, and it's just wave after wave after wave of pain. And you feel like, this is it. This is my life. I'm never going to be able to get a tiny bit of air. But then one day, you get this little bit of air, right? Maybe you smile again, right? You laugh at a joke, right? When you hadn't done that in a week or two. And you get this glimpse of like, ooh, I remember that feeling. But then boom, another wave. And then right back to pain and sadness, right? But then maybe a couple of days later, you go back, now you're back at work, and you're all of a sudden you have another moment where you catch your breath a little bit again. And his analogy is when you get those moments, row the boat. Like just when you have a feeling of reprieve, go outside, mow the lawn, take advantage of it, because yes, there's going to be another wave. And in fact, there's always going to be those waves. They're never going away. They're never going away. So I don't want to sit here and sound like, that everything is, roses and great. And, I look back at Graham and Savannah with nothing but pure happiness. But at the same time, that has to be the story, right?
Yeah.
That has to be. Those waves of sorrow and pain are going to come. But wouldn't we be doing a disservice to your son, to Graham and Savannah, if everything that we did that had to do with them was us crying and being, why, God, why, and I hate the world?
Yeah.
And while that might be totally understandable and fair for us to feel and do, that's not the legacy I want for my kids. That's not what I want them to be associated with, because that would be false, right? That's not true. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was trying to state earlier is, man, they've made me a father, a great father. They've made me a much better person. They've made me so much more patient. I'm a big believer in, there's also a line in Stoicism about almost feeling bad for people who've never endured any type of suffering or tragedy, right? And it's kind of like I would have preferred not to, right? So it's not the same as saying, if you want to really trigger my wife, don't ever say to my wife, everything happens for a reason. Like, oh boy, she hates that one. And understandably so, because it's like, are you telling me my kids had to die for me to learn a lesson? Now, some people might feel that way. And if it brings someone else comfort, to each their own, I guess. Yeah. So I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is, again, we get a short time in life, and emotions are everything, right? I mean, how we feel, building relationships, because of what we unfortunately have endured, the love now we have for each other, and the love we now have for our baby Thea Savannah, who we'll talk about, right? So the love that we have for our friends and family, and the way we now view the world, and we could never have had that without Graham and Savannah, right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not glad that this happened, but having experienced this, they allowed us to tap into emotions and feelings that I'm sorry, I just don't believe that people who haven't endured, maybe not this exact thing, but just, and they can't fathom that. They can't understand that. And in some way, I do agree. It's almost, I don't want to say the word pity, but if you were to go through life like that, never having to endure it, right? It's like exercise, right? You have to kind of break your body down and build it back up. I see it like that. Like having gone through what we've gone through, it's just opened our eyes and our hearts in a way that without Graham and Savannah, we wouldn't have ever known, you know? And that to me is a beautiful thing. And that is them. That is them here right now. So when Michele and I do something kind out of the goodness of our hearts, you know, that's Graham and Savannah, you know? When our daughter now, Thea, you know, is cranky, and instead of snapping at her and being like, Thea, come on, stop it. Like we have this otherworldly patience. I've seen it, right? Our patience with Thea, like it blows me away. You know, I'm like, wow, this is really, and that's Graham and Savannah. It's them, right? And I'm sure, and again, there's probably countless millions of parents who are amazing parents who did not lose a child like this, who are great parents. So I'm not saying, hey, you have to go through this to be a patient parent. Yeah. I want to make that very clear. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is I'm just in love with Graham and Savannah and what they have done in this world and what they've done for me and my wife. And that is something to be able to look back to when I was talking about those waves. And when you get that moment to catch your breath and breathe, it's a beautiful thing to think about and have, right? And I can talk about that and I can smile. And like, yes, that's what I should be doing when I'm talking about my kids, right? Mm-hmm. I cry a lot over Graham and Savannah, but I shouldn't cry every single time. Again, my opinion, this is not a dogma. This is not me telling people what to feel or do. But I just don't want them to be associated with sadness and pain in every aspect of life, right?
Yeah.
And trust me, I now work in finance. I've been in finance a couple of years. I work with a lot of retirees. I work with people in their 70s and their 80s, you know, and I've gotten to be very close with some of them. And I've shared my story. And Michele and I are very open about Graham and Savannah. So some of our clients who I've had numerous meetings with, I've shared this story and they've broken down and they will tell me about a son or daughter that they lost, you know, 60 years ago. And the emotion, and it's both kind of like jarring and also, I'm not going to say comforting, but because it's jarring because, oh boy, I have a long time of this isn't going away. You know, here's this woman at 85 years old and you know, her mind might be a little foggy on this or that, but boy, when she would talk about the child that she lost, I mean, like she was as if she had lost them yesterday. Mm-hmm. You know, that's what we're looking at. That's what parents of loss are looking at. So it's jarring and that like, man, this is a long road ahead, but it's also comforting in that, okay, I know it, right? There's no surprises here. There's no, hey man, how come it's been 5 years and I'm still feeling this way? Nope. This is the life we now have. There's going to be those waves that come crashing down and almost feel suffocating. Then there's going to be moments when we can catch our breath. And when we get those moments and we can row the boat, go smile, have fun, and do what you can, because the waves are going to come back. They're never going away.
Yeah. I should probably clarify, like when I was talking about my son, Brandon, and the anger and the sadness, that's not the only thing that is associated with him. And that's, a lot of people don't understand that. It's like, in the very beginning, that's all I could understand was the anger, was the pain, was the sadness. But as time, as healing, as things come along, the tapestry of my son is woven with so much. And I love how you're talking about how Graham and Savannah are making you a better man, making you a man who's more patient, has more patience, who is kinder, who is more compassionate and stuff like that. I pray all parents are like that, and especially parents of loss, because, you know, we would have those daily practices of patience with our children, but that would be a one-on-one relationship. But where we have to not just do it in our own minds, but in the world, openly in the world, practice our patience with our children, sort of vicariously through. You know, we have to practice vicariously through I don't know how to best put it, but yeah, it's a hard concept that we have to, how do you, I don't know what I'm saying. I'm trying to,
that's how hard it is.
It is.
That's how I mean, when I know it makes people uncomfortable, not to talk about that I'm a parent, some people get uncomfortable when you talk about your kids who've
passed away,
who passed away, right?
Yeah.
So when you talk about things that you're talking about and you say, like, hey, like they manifest themselves in this way and that way because they're my kids, and like, it becomes a very difficult conversation.
Yeah. Thank you. It really is. As I was thinking about it, I was like, the parent-child, as father to my son, as father to my other children as well. It's every single day I have to work on that. I have to parent them. I have to be patient with them. And whereas Brandon, he's not here physically, I mentally have to practice all those things with him.
So that is a great, actually, that is, you nailed it. There you go. That is exactly how to say it. I mean, I love the way you just said it in that imagery of, hey, they're all my kids, and my relationship with them and how I grow and evolve. They're all going to make me better, hopefully, right? That's in some way, shape, or form. But that's just it. They're all in the same discussion, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that, hey, I have my children here, and then Brandon, he's a different. No. This is my family, and I have this relationship, and I have this relationship, and I have this relationship.
Yeah.
You don't need to point out to me the obvious that my children aren't here. I get that.
It's glaringly
obvious. But they are still
obvious.
A part of the conversation. They are still a part of every conversation. And these things pop into my mind too. And I remember Michele pointed this out, and I had written this down. And I referenced earlier, hey, we're all here for a short time. My kids were here, and what I feel like was way too short. But at the end of the day, it's all short for all of us, right? So we don't get a lot of time to live life, right. So with that being said, I look at Graham and Savannah's life, and I think, okay, what was their life like? And I'm stealing this from something. I remember Michele has shown this to me in maybe a book or a Bible, but it's so true. All they ever knew was love, goodness, and like that's all they ever knew in this world, right? That's pretty awesome, right? I mean, we all know. I mean, to say, could you imagine having said, hey, throughout my whole life, I was never mad, I was never angry, I never confronted anybody who didn't love me, no one ever yelled at me, and that's amazing. And that was their life,
Yeah.
And as I said, we have 2 dogs. We love dogs. We're big dog people. And you hear that about dogs, right? Like, hey, how come, there's it's, I forget how the exact wording, but like when a little kid will ask, how come dogs don't live as long? And it's because they don't need as many years as we do to live a perfect life. Like they get it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
They understand, love. They understand what it is to love unconditionally and to be loved. That's all they know, right? So a dog's here, doesn't have to be here as long because they figured out like that. I like to think that was Graham and Savannah. They were inside Michele feeling nothing but love their entire lives. That's all they knew. So that's pretty awesome. That is pretty awesome. So what can I learn from that? What can we learn from that? What can I do to make them proud? All those things. The point I think is going back to like the wave analogy, in those moments where you get a little reprieve, you can start to see that. You can start to, and you can smile. And, I kind of glossed over, the moments after really because they were blurred and stuff like that. But because that was almost like this lost period, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just you're blinded by pain, right? And that's okay. Do that. Live there. Live there for as long as you need. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. But then, and this is stuff you'll hear or people will hear from trying to give advice and stuff like that is, you will get to a point where you can ... and you will get back. But in those first days, weeks, like that is the last thing you want to hear.
Yeah.
So I don't want to sound like I'm saying that either. Like, hey, for anyone listening to this who's going through it, just hang in there. You'll laugh again. And while that is true, no. Right now, if you're someone this is a new experience for you, you live in my opinion, you live in that pain and sorrow for however long you need. Yeah. And slowly, again, as you get that ability to catch a breath and then it becomes 2 breaths, you'll figure that stuff out yourself. The stuff that I'm saying, it took endless amount of tears and endless amount of anger and what felt like endless amounts, I should say, before I could even begin to comprehend smiling about my kids and having these types of thoughts. So, whether it's called, there's no timeline. There's no timeline, right? So for anybody to say like, oh, don't worry, you'll get through this, you'll get past this, that can seem insensitive because it insinuates there's a timeline when there just isn't.
No, yeah.
There isn't.
Yeah, there really isn't. How individualistic mourning is. It's amazing how my way of mourning is so different. So
yeah, and we talk about mourning, and I don't know what other people. This was another thing, right? So Graham and Savannah passed away, and now again we are 12 days removed from a healthy, happy 20-week scan to now this, and now you say, well, what do we do? Do we bury them? Do we have a service? What's the game plan there, right? Mm-hmm. For us, it was no question. We wanted to bury them. We wanted to have a service. We wanted to do it all. It just felt right again, right? Mm-hmm. We've read stories of people who didn't do that and later on regretted it and stuff. But again, this was our decision. There is no right answer or wrong answer here. This is what we wanted to do. In fact, in the place where my dad is buried, where my brother-in-law is buried, my grandparents are buried, Michele and I, we bought our plot along with Graham and Savannah. So one day we'll be right there next to them. And we did the service. And I say this to kind of illustrate the impact. And again, this isn't I hope nothing ever comes out as like a woe is me, because I hate that. I hate that. I hate that feeling of I would never want to elicit pity from anyone, because I don't like that. But when we did the service for Graham and Savannah, again, we did it at St. Teresa's Church in Kenilworth, New Jersey. And I stood at the same pulpit I stood at to give my dad's eulogy in 2017, my brother-in-law Bobby's eulogy in 2018, and now my children in 2019. So 3 years, same church, same pulpit, giving a eulogy. It was as crushing as you can feel. So for Michele and I, there's a famous line that people say that, hey, if the entire world threw their problems into one big pile, you would probably take your problems back once you saw what other people were dealing with. And there's a great lesson there, right? Like, hey, man, there's people in this world dealing with some really, really hard, terrible stuff, man. So me walking around in my air-conditioned home with an iPhone and stuff like that, how bad, right? So I am a believer of things like that, putting life into perspective. But for Michele and I, we have a hard time. We sure feel like not many people would want to sign up for our story, and this is a struggle, right? Because that's not a healthy way to think, right? Again, that gets you down the path of why me, and it's very backwards moving. It does not help. And again, thinking about Graham and Savannah, is that going to make them proud of me? Is me throwing my hands up in the air and saying, life has been so unfair to us that we deserve X, Y, Z, and why do they get everything and don't we deserve a break? And that is just, there's nowhere to go with that. And again, it's understandable that you'll go through those moments, but you got to get out of it. You can't stay there. You can't stay there forever and thinking, why me? Why did this have to happen to us? It's just, it's hard, because it's easy to want to feel that way.
Yeah.
So even though, I say, I'll tell Michele, and I tread very lightly here because of the relationship of a mother and a child, but I'm sure everything we went through with Graham and Savannah, I'm sure there's a woman out there who was told, I'm sorry, you can't have kids. Like, it's medically, you're not going to have that. So you can adopt or something like that. Maybe, maybe not. But I believe there's a woman out there who, if she could feel life in her womb for 20 weeks and have that experience, she might say, I would give anything to feel that. And I can't. Michele, I'll never feel that. And even though my heart breaks for you, I wish, right? So there may be a woman out there who can't have children who looks at my wife and her story and says, I wish I could have that. Maybe that's a morbid thought, maybe it's great. But I think it puts in perspective sometimes, as terrible as it was for us, is there something positive that we can get? And then that leads you down the path of, well, of course, there's something positive. There's Graham and Savannah. Okay, well, what were their lives like? Well, their lives were surrounded by love. And okay, what did they do on this earth? Well, at the very least, they created two people, Ryan and Michele, who now have this ability to love in such a way that they might not have before. And now me and Michele are spreading that love in the world. Oh, wow. Now we've immediately went from why me to, okay, you know what? Let's go in this direction instead. And I know I'm rambling a ton, but I hope some of these pieces that people can grab and maybe try and just use that as an exercise to, go down this path or that path and just help them, maybe 1 step forward, 10 steps back, 1 step forward, 10 steps back, or 1 step forward, 10 steps back kind of thing. And hopefully that 10 steps become 9, become 8, and eventually move forward. Those are just some of the things that, we think about when we talk about how to move forward, how to, go get through the next day, really.
Yeah. The continual forward momentum is hard. It's hard. And as you were saying that, getting stuck in that rut of why me, why us it's a big detriment to your physical, your mental.
And it's not unique to this scenario, right? People go, right? So again, I think of if one of the things Graham and Savannah will be synonymous with is helping to just eradicate that from my life. Now, I struggle, as any human does, with
it's a constant work. Yeah.
Our daughter Thea, her 1-year-old birthday party, and we're watching the weather, and like, oh, is the weather going to be sunny for it? And we just put a pool in our backyard, and what if it's not a nice day? And I'm thinking to myself, we were like getting like really worked up as the weather, like 60% chance of rain. Like, I can't believe this. This is, we have the worst luck. I'm like, wait a minute, stop it. Just, first of all, it's a 1-year-old party. If it rains, we will figure out fine. And also, we're upset because we just put in a pool. We want people to swim. Oh yeah, let's not leave the detail out. We just put in a pool. That is awesome. Like, what do you mean, why me, why me? Instead, it should be like, man, we are really lucky. We're really lucky that 80 people want to come celebrate our daughter's 1-year-old birthday. Wow. There's 80 people who care enough to say, like, I want to come celebrate that. Like, so all of a sudden now, thanks to Graham and Savannah, because perhaps without Graham and Savannah, we really would have felt like the outcome of this 1-year-old party was the most essential thing in our world, And maybe then leading up to that party, now me and Michele are short with each other and we're snapping at each other because we're on edge. And now we wasted a couple of weeks of our lives not being the best husband and wife because of the stress over this party.
Yeah.
But thanks to Graham and Savannah, like we have a different perspective, So even though there'll be that moment of like, oh no, the rain and this is the terrible thing, then it's, you know what? Yeah. Man, we got a pool. We have family and friends who love us. Oh yeah. And we have Thea Savannah. That's our daughter. Man, you know what? I don't care if it thunder and rains and tornadoes that day, man. We are blessed. We have so many things to be grateful for. We have pictures of Graham and Savannah up in our house, in our dining room. And, we talked about that, and, it really wasn't a discussion, but, some people might think, hey, you might make people uncomfortable, and there was never even a thought of like, oh yeah, we wouldn't want to do that, So that was no question, but I love it because again, it's a great reminder of what I was just talking about, right? Because human nature is to kind of feel like, oh, we have the worst luck. Oh, we have the worst luck. And again, I think some people might look at our story and, man, losing your dad to cancer. And again, I don't think there's anyone on this planet who hasn't been affected by cancer in some shape, form, or fashion, right? So even though that may not be terribly unique, even in the way it happened, right? For him to have the surgery, to beat it, for it to come back, for it to happen so fast, and then, for Bobby, my brother-in-law, who was in his early 40s with 3 kids, with a whole life ahead of him, for that to happen. And then for Graham and Savannah, I think we've endured a good amount of sorrow, but I don't think that gives us any claim over, hey, like we deserve to feel bad for us. Like, no, I think about Graham and Savannah, and I think about, I would never want anybody to look at them with pity, at any stage of time, in our lives and their lives. I would never want that. So, okay, great. I have to live my life in such a way that I don't go looking for the same thing. None of that black cloud talk, none of that woe is me. Although it have, don't get me wrong, things happen and you catch yourself. But again, because of Graham and Savannah, because of my ability to catch it now instead of me and Michele arguing and now sitting on opposite ends of the couch and not talking, and like over what? Because there were dishes in the sink and I forgot to wash them. And now we're like, we only get a few nights together. We only get I wish I could be married to her for 1,000,000 years, but we're going to be together for whatever time we have on this earth. Do I want to waste one of those nights being mad about, dishes in the sink? No. And I love that my babies taught me that they are a constant lesson and reminder to not waste that time. I mean, how powerful is that? I mean, how great of a legacy is that? If I could sign up right now and know that when I pass away, somebody will stand up and say, hey, Ryan on this earth, you know what he did? He taught me to be a better husband and to be a better son and a better father. And because of Ryan, I was able to be all those things. Sign me up right now. Like, I'll take it. If that's no one's going to talk about, my endeavors in CrossFit or rugby, right? No one's going to remember my horrible playing on the pitch. But boy, if they could say that, that is everything. And guess what? That's what our twins are. That's who Graham and Savannah are. And I love that. I really do. Like, so it's having this conversation with you. I think you can see the ebb and flow of the pain and the tears. And then like I'm glowing talking about them. Like, man, like, I love this. I'm so proud of them. And I hope to God they're proud of me.
Yeah, the beautiful legacy that they have on you, the impact on you, and the beautiful legacy that you are building for them through your life and through everything that you do. Yeah. It really, like, the love of your children is very apparent in how you act and what you do.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. This was quite a journey. You really don't know where it's going. Emotionally, you don't know. You just don't know when you open up a chapter, like, what emotions are going to come out.
Yeah.
But I'm a big believer in, for me, this is therapy, man. So I appreciate you guys so much. And if not one single person ever listens to this conversation, what it's done for me is worth every second we spent doing this. So thank you. No. But with that being said, if one person that does need to listen to this does listen to this and it helps even that much, then it was even that much more worth it.